Hi, I'm Kelsey Zeiser. Welcome to What's the Story, a short podcast from Light Reading where we take a step back from the most significant topics in telecom to tell you the latest news, how we got here, what it all means, and what to expect next. Today I'm talking with Light Reading's Mike Dano about direct-to-device messaging services. We discuss why the major wireless carriers are teaming up with satellite operators to deliver their own flavor of D2D messaging and what some of the monetization opportunities might be. We also wrap up with a little bonus content about the Fermi paradox, so stay tuned for that. Hey, Mike, welcome back to What's the Story, the Space Edition.
Ooh, space. We're going to go to space today, huh?
Yes,
so
we
cool.
are. You and I love space.
We do
Anything
love space.
related.
We do love space. Yeah.
Yes, it's
Super.
awesome.
Yeah, it is.
So we're going to talk a little bit about satellite networks today and direct-to-device messaging. Before we get into what's going on there, for those who might not, the not as space nerds as us.
Which, how could you not be? It's so interesting.
I know.
I get into
But
that space stuff.
yeah, for anyone who's not a space nerd and might not be familiar with it, can you explain what direct-to-device or D2D messaging is?
Sure. Yeah, it's a new thing. It's unclear how big this opportunity is. Some people think it will be not that big, but some people think it will be really big. But it's basically just literally connecting your phone to a satellite, which sounds relatively normal. I mean, we've had satellite phones for a long time, but it's actually quite a magical. It's a magical technology because most cell phones, just connect to a cell tower that's maybe a few miles away. And so connecting to a satellite that's like hundreds of miles away is really a technological marvel. But it's increasingly possible. I mean, we've had iPhones for years that can do this stuff, and now we're probably going to have a lot more phones doing it. As companies like SpaceX and AST Space Mobile and Viasat and Inmarsat and EchoStar, like they're all doing this stuff. Terrestrial, lots of companies are out there doing this stuff. So we're going to have a lot more phones going to satellites. And so it's really interesting from an industry perspective, because what does that mean? Does it mean that you need to build a cell tower in a rural area? Maybe not.
Yeah.
Cool
And
stuff.
didn't, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe, so Apple launched the first one with Globalstar, I think in 2022 with the iPhone 14 for SOS messaging. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. That was our first taste of what this is going to look like. And it was real entry level type stuff. It was only emergency messaging. It wasn't even just text messaging. It was, it only was intended for you to use in an emergency. But that's the starting point.
Mm-hmm. And now they've expanded that, right, to just any messaging. So it's not just to 911. It's
It's just
help. I'm
texting.
in an avalanche. Let me reach out to my parents and let them know.
Yeah, I'm buried under 10 feet of snow. Though it wouldn't work in that scenario. You have to have a view of the sky.
Yeah, that's true. Okay,
Yeah.
so avalanche is not a good. Maybe if you like stick your arm out.
Yeah, if your hand is outside of the snow,
Yeah,
and you have a view of the sky, it'll work. But yeah, no, Apple, Apple and Globalstar introduced that service. It worked basically, and then late last year they opened it up to just regular text messaging, and so now it's no longer intended for emergency only scenarios. Now it's intended for regular. If you want to send a text message, you can, using their system, which is really interesting on a number of reasons. It basically means that they have the capacity to do that kind of thing, and that was an unknown situation when they first launched it in 2022, because these satellite systems, they don't have near the capacity that a terrestrial regular cell towers on the ground have. The network capacity within a satellite system is so much smaller than a regular terrestrial network. So the fact that Apple has expanded it to regular text messaging means that they know how many emergency messages they are getting over the past 2 years, and they believe that they can support um, a lot more text messaging with this system. And the other interesting thing I think we just wrote about was that Globalstar is in the process of expanding, basically launching a whole new network of satellites to support Apple. So they have about 2 dozen supporting Apple's services now, and they're going to launch an unknown number of additional new satellites to support Apple in the future in the coming years.
Mhm. Yeah, and I know they're, as you said, of course, doing more than just emergency services, but it is really important for people who are, maybe like you, avid climbers
Mhm.
who are out in the wild, or, unfortunately, we have had a lot. It seems like the number of natural disasters we're having is increasing. So, being able to connect with people during, the wildfires, or when Western North Carolina was hit with the hurricanes last summer, being able to connect via satellites is really important. Um, so then on the service provider and satellite operator side, why is it? Can we talk a little bit more about why it's so important for them to be teaming up, and why are they, in addition to Apple, getting on board with D2D messaging?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. It's sort of this new market, and no one knows quite which direction it's going to go. And so it's sort of it's as a free for all. It's like Apple is offering it, Google is offering it on its Pixel phones, Huawei has it on some of its phones, um, and now the mobile network operators are getting into the game by offering it directly to their customers who might not have phones that are capable of doing it. So we just saw, T-Mobile is in the process of launching this with SpaceX, using the SpaceX satellites, and then AT&T and Verizon have partnered with AST Space Mobile to launch it on some of their phones as well. And then Verizon has a separate deal with a company called Skylo to offer it on some of their Android phones that are capable of doing that. So yeah, it's you so as a customer or as a smartphone user, you might be able to get it from Apple, you might be able to get it from Pixel, you might be able to get it from T-Mobile, and you might be able to get it from multiple ones based on what kind of phone you have. So yeah, the and we're literally watching this play out in real time. In fact, speaking of real time, I wanted to mention literally today, you and I are I think it's this afternoon. Today, SpaceX is going to test its big new rocket, its Starship rocket, later today. So I know, as to talk about space nerds, that's a big neat thing. Is that a big part of this whole thing is like getting those satellites up into space, and so they're using a certain size rocket now that can do that. And several different companies do that, offer smaller rockets, but they're working on getting a lot bigger rockets to launch more satellites up into space. And so SpaceX is testing a new bigger rocket later today for that.
Mhm.
Interesting stuff.
Is the one that they're testing today, would that be a reusable rocket?
Yeah, it's one of the reusable. That's the whole new trend, right? Is
Yeah.
like it's too expensive to just launch a big rocket up there and then have it explode. So
Right.
lots of companies now are working on reusable rockets, and SpaceX is certainly leading that.
Yeah, that's like, not to go too far on a tangent, but that does seem like that would be, if I were an engineer, that would kind of hurt my heart a little bit, of like the amount of time and effort you've put into this rocket just to like see it explode. And that's kind of what you're hoping for. You're like, okay,
Right.
we gotta get into space and then start fresh, do a new one.
That's gone. Got to build a whole nother one. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
yeah, oh yeah. This reusable rocket, it really, the idea of reusable rockets really changes the game in terms of satellites. I mean, you just the historically, yeah, you can launch one satellite or two satellites, but now you can potentially launch dozens of small or
Mhm.
hundreds of smaller satellites, and so it really does. I think that's why we're talking about this, is that the ability to launch a lot of satellites um, quickly has really just changed this whole game.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's not just of course, the technology for the satellites themselves has come a long way with software-defined networking and using some of the things that they've learned from terrestrial networks. But like you said, also the ability to just get more into the atmosphere or into space.
into
Yeah.
space.
Um, so, earlier you mentioned that there's so many different organizations that are working on their own flavor of this. So maybe we can talk a little bit about what the monetization opportunities are, because to putting on my consumer hat for a minute, it seems like it could potentially get confusing to have a similar offering from Apple. Do I pay Apple? Do I pay Verizon or AT&T or whomever my service provider is? Or are they offering it for free and then paid later? It just seems like it could get really complicated.
Yeah, I think it's going to get really complicated, and I think that's why there's a lot of debate on the overall size of this market, because we don't really know what the revenue situation is going to be. We don't know how much money companies are going to make on this kind of thing. And so, maybe they'll make a lot of money, maybe it'll be a really big service, or maybe they won't make any money. And, all this investment into this area is it's going to take a long time to pay off. So that's really an open question
Mhm.
right now, is what people, how much you can pay for it. And I had it, somebody explained it to me as like insurance. Um, and I think that's a nice way to look at these services overall, is that, normally when you're in a city, your phone is going to connect to a regular cell tower. So, that's how this whole thing is going to work. And the only reason that you want the satellite component is when you go outside of the city, when you leave your sort of standard coverage area. And so you'll only need it, in very random times when you're not at home, when you're traveling or whatever. And so some people who go into the backcountry a lot might need it a lot, and some people who never leave the city won't ever need it. But you kind of look at it like insurance. It's like when you do need it, you definitely need it. When when your car breaks down in the middle of nowhere, you really want that. And so you won't use it every day, but when you do need it, you really want it, like insurance.
Yeah.
And so anyway, yeah, payment systems. I mean, we don't really have a baseline as to how this is going to get paid for and how people are going to bill for it. In fact, Apple had intended to start charging for their emergency messaging service, I think this year, 2025. And they said, oh, no, we won't do that. We'll keep offering it for free for now. So we still don't know exactly whether Apple is going to start charging for it, and if so, how much. And I think that with the service that T-Mobile is just now getting started with SpaceX, it's a beta service, and there are no charges. So we still don't know how much T-Mobile is going to charge for it either. I think the only real clear charging scenarios we've seen have been the dedicated satellite messaging services. There's several. There's a one from Garmin. There's one called Spot. And a lot of times those are sort of, it's like you pay $5 or $10 a month for 100 messages. It's, those kind of pricing scenarios. And so, whether we see it ultimately, bundled into a service plan, like, you have to subscribe to the premium service plan in order to get satellite messaging. Maybe that's how it'll work. Or maybe you pay a per month fee or per message fee or whatever it is. We haven't really seen that play out. But AST Space Mobile is an interesting company to watch because they're public. And when they first filed for their IPO, they put some numbers into their filings for that showed what kinds of revenues they expect, and they do expect like a per message fee. And they had some real big numbers in terms of amount of money that they expect to generate from the service. But those numbers are all they had hoped to have commercial service by like 2023 or 2024, and that hasn't happened yet. So they're all those numbers are a little suspect at this point. In fact, the only clear numbers we've gotten are from Globalstar, because they are commercially running the service for Apple, and it's a pretty small number. It's $200 million a quarter type thing that they're getting. It's really not much. It could grow over time, but the first numbers that we've got in terms of size of the market, not real big.
Yeah, it does seem like it is kind of a niche market because again, it's those, backcountry enthusiasts, and then I imagine there's times when it spikes when there is a natural disaster, um, or major weather changes or something. Um, and speaking of other services, HMD launched the off-grid hotspot device during CES, and that was kind of interesting. So that's with the device, you can click a button to operate SOS emergency signal. And then they also have different plans for if you want unlimited messages, or there's also a plan for 350 text and check in messages. So you can also kind of pre-populate these check-in messages that you could send to with click of a button, send to your friends and family. So
So would you buy that, Kelsey? Like, do you have a phone that does that now? What do you
I
think
have
about
an
that? Would you go
Apple
for it?
phone, and I'm not the most out in the woods I am is like there's a park in Cary, a nearby town. like but I mean as far as I know, I think my service is
You
fine
still
out
get
there.
coverage.
So yeah, that's the thing. I'm like they're also launching these kind of one-off devices. Are people gonna buy these? And then, when the carriers and smartphone vendors fully catch up, do they just use it as a coaster? Like, like you just bought this device and plan, but it seems like, um, I imagine T-Mobile, Verizon, and AT&T are going to come out with their own pretty soon here, right? Like we're
Yeah.
expecting this year, I would
Yeah,
think.
yeah, exactly. I mean, well, AT&T and Verizon they may have to wait for, Verizon, I think, is already offering some services through Skylo, but the AST space mobile satellite constellation won't be up and running 100% for at least a year or two,
Oh,
possibly
gotcha.
longer. So um, T-Mobile's a little bit in the lead here with its SpaceX deal. We might see a commercial service, later in 2025 from T-Mobile and SpaceX.
I think, well, I guess one benefit of this device is I think the battery life is pretty significant. I'm just double checking. Um, Give me 1 second.
Yeah, it's like a couple of days, I think. I mean, that's
Yeah, I want to say it's like 3 days. Yeah,
yeah,
3 day battery
great.
life.
Yeah,
It's also got military grade durability. So I think if I was someone that was, regularly trying to summit peaks and doing a lot of hiking, it would give me peace of mind to have something like that as a backup, especially if, I think in certain temperatures your cell phone's not going to work as well, right? So
yeah.
having something durable that's a backup, I don't think that's a bad idea. And it's not that expensive. It's well, the device itself I think is 250. So, that's not nothing, but
Uh,
the plans are around $15 or less a month. Uh, and then you can add like unlimited tracking for $5 a month. So the peace of mind, I feel like it's worth the price. What do you think? Would you get one?
yeah, I haven't. I do climbing and skiing and that kind of stuff out in the backcountry, and um, um, yeah, I've never invested in one. I see them out pretty regularly. People walk around with one of the Garmin's or whatever attached to their backpack, and so that's increasingly common when I'm out and I see people with those things. And I have a friend of mine has one, and when we were coming out one time, he sent a message, all's good, don't worry about us or whatever. Um, and yeah, I've thought about routinely about getting one, but I've been out for years doing this kind of stuff, long before this kind of technology was widely available. So, I was doing it before it was available, and I don't know. It is a safety thing for sure, and I do carry my phone with me all the time for sure. And I have maps and stuff on there that I use. So yeah, I feel like I don't know. I'm so cheap, $300 plus 10 a month. I'd rather just have it on my phone and, maybe a $5 a month type thing.
Yeah, I think
That to me feels a
more
little
if it was if you were like a, base jumping influencer or something. I mean, I'm sure that's a job. Then then this might be a good thing for you. But like you said, it's insurance. So sometimes it's hard to want to put that money aside for something that you may never need, but then you may end up in like a
Yeah.
127-hour situation
Yeah,
and really
exactly.
wish you had that.
Right. All you got to do is break an ankle, and now you're stuck.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I definitely can see the value of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So interesting. Well, as we wrap up, I mean, it sounds like we've got, you mentioned Verizon and AT&T. Maybe the next year or two we'll see their services, and then T-Mobile. It sounds like sometime this year.
Possibly, yeah, that's the plan.
Okay, so we'll keep an eye out for that. But just a little fun thing to wrap up with on our space nerd topic. Tell us
Yeah.
a little bit about what the Fermi paradox
Fermi
is.
paradox. It's my favorite thing. So, yeah, it's the Fermi paradox is where why haven't we met aliens yet? That's the
Where are the
paradox.
aliens?
Where are all these
I think
aliens?
they're in the ocean. I don't want to
You're,
steal your thunder of
uh,
explaining, but
you're an Atlantis person, lost city of Atlantis.
I like the idea that they've always, some people believe that they've always been here and they're in the deep ocean because there's so much of the ocean that's undiscovered. And
Oh, I
also, it
love
would
that.
be a lot faster for them to like pop up in the night sky if they're already here and they're just watching us and like waiting. I don't know what they're waiting for. That's the
I don't
Fermi
know either.
paradox, right?
Exactly.
Like,
Right.
how come they haven't shown up yet?
Exactly. Like, so if the universe is so huge and there's so many, apparently there's tons of planets out there that have the capability to support life or look like they may have the capability to support life much more than previously thought. Uh, yeah. So it's like, if there's all these planets out there that can support life, why haven't aliens come and contacted us? We're launching satellites out there. Like, we're sort of engaging in a little early space travel, somewhat, kind of like, yeah, why haven't we seen aliens yet? That's the Fermi paradox. And so I was listening to this really interesting podcast with a guy named Adam Frank. Yeah, an astrophysicist, and he was talking about why this is. Why haven't we seen aliens yet? Considering that we've been looking, the SETI program, which is like a sort of a hobbyist program to look for aliens. Like, they haven't found any evidence of aliens. We haven't seen any, you know, planets that have what look like alien civilizations on them. Why not? And he was saying that the reason why is because we just haven't looked enough yet. He said that if you take the whole universe, uh, and the amount, and if it were an ocean, the amount of the percentage of the universe that we have efficiently scanned for alien life is like a bathtub in an ocean. And so he was saying that, it's probably that we just haven't been able to look enough yet. And also that if you think about alien civilizations and you do some like modeling as to how they might travel through the galaxy, it's like there's large chunks of the galaxy where they just wouldn't be visiting regularly. And he said there's actually a non-0% chance that aliens have visited the Earth. They just did it when, way before humans were alive. And even if they left evidence of their visit here, it would have, a million years ago, it would have, disappeared by now. So he said there's still a chance for alien life out there, and maybe we'll see it later. So I don't know. I thought that to me is super interesting as a fan of Star Trek and right, Star Wars and all that stuff.
Yeah, I watched one like really short video on it and they were saying maybe we're just not that interesting to them. And it was kind of a
Well,
downer.
not you, Kelsey. Me, definitely. But you, though, aliens definitely need to get a little bit of their Kelsey in their lives.
Aw.
Ah,
Thanks.
ah,
Yeah, I think I kind of feel like I personally think they're around. They just I don't know what they're waiting for exactly, but
mm,
I mean, hasn't the government released all this footage from like, pilots
yeah,
recording things that they
seeing
can't explain and they're
weird
like,
things.
"Well, our machinery doesn't operate this way. Like we don't know what this spacecraft could be." And then all the like drone stuff. So,
Yeah.
I think they know more than they're letting on.
It certainly seems like there's a really good chance that there are aliens out there.
Yeah.
Somewhere.
Yeah.
And
It does seem kind of,
right? There's so many livable
what
planets. The universe
hubris
is
on
so
our part to
huge.
think that we're the only ones, like.
Yeah, exactly. Like it. Yeah, yeah. That there's an extremely high chance that some sentient life is out there somewhere.
Yeah.
We just haven't seen them yet.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, this was fun talking about a little bit about the Fermi paradox. It's also a fun name, Fermi.
I know. It's so cool. So
Yeah.
interesting.
It made me
Plus,
think of Furbies, but
we've got
that's a
the
whole other
what's that?
combo. I said it made me think of Furbies, but that's totally different.
Slightly different. Related, but slightly different.
Yeah. Well, thanks to our listeners for sticking in and humoring us with our space nerd discussion. And
So interesting.
we'll definitely stay attuned to what's happening with D2D messaging, because I think we're going to get some more updates on that in the near future. So Thanks so much, Mike. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Kelsey.
Thanks so much, Mike, for taking the time to talk today. And thank you to our amazing producer, Pierre Landriot, for making this episode. Be sure to subscribe to the Light Reading Podcast for more interviews and insights from the team. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next time.